Hi, welcome. This is Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar, and today we are going to be talking about sleep. Yes, this is something that affects us all. Estimated 300 million Southeast Asians actually have a sleeping problem. Now, why does this happen? Does this happen because of our working schedule or hectic lives, or even those little things in our pockets, smartphones? Now, we are going to be exploring all that in today's episode. Join me. This is Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar. All right, thank you, Dr. Samson, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, in conjunction of World Sleep Day, we have to talk about sleep.
Yeah.
And the first question that comes into my mind and everyone who's watching is, what actually happens when we sleep?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a beautiful process because your brain actually changes its electromagnetic waveforms, right? So you can measure this with EEG, electroencephalography, and you can actually see the physical changes between light sleep, deep sleep, slow wave sleep, and REM sleep.
Okay.
And all these different pieces and parts have different functions. So it's quite remarkable. It's a very complex behavior.
So when you're talking about REM sleep, what do you actually mean?
So REM sleep is rapid eye movement, and to your listeners, many of them might know that this is actually linked mostly with dreaming. So that qualitative experience of dreaming, about 80% of the time when you're in REM, if a researcher wakes you up, you are able to recall a dream. Now, functionally, what REM is associated with is emotional regulation. So when you get a lot of REM, what it allows you to do is filter out the emotional valence, the content of the previous experience of your day. And if it was something that was really dramatic and powerful that happened, it will tag it and say, okay, we need to remember that for the future. And then it removes the emotional energy from it, and it allows you to remember it without feeling the emotion.
Oh,
it's pretty cool.
Like a filtering system?
It is a filtering system for your, for your emotions. It's actually why one of the therapies for PTSD now, post-traumatic stress syndrome, is sleep, is to improve, you target the sleep, and it actually improves the outcomes. Because when you experience something traumatic, say you're a soldier and you experience something traumatic in the war and you come back and you get poor sleep, that poor sleep is one of the downward spirals that is inhibiting your ability to process the emotional energy from that, the emotional valence, so that you can have better sleep and better functioning daytime cognitive activity. So it's really, really critical.
So why is it that getting sleep is so important? What actually happens when we don't get enough sleep?
Yeah, it's linked to so many things. It's linked to attention, to memory. It is linked to your ability to inhibit your behavior. And this is actually one of the hallmarks of humans. So if we look at our common ancestors, the chimpanzees, they're not very good at inhibiting their aggression. They're pretty aggressive. You push them a little bit and they will snap, right? Humans, one of the things we do really well, actually, compared to other primates, I mean, we all know some aggressive people, but it is nothing compared to what it's like to be a chimpanzee. Humans are really good at social cooperation, and probably one of the things that allows us to do that is high quality sleep.
All right, and I believe I even read online that the most longest consecutive days a person has not slept is 11 days. But hallucinations actually happen after the third day.
Yeah.
So even after the third day, you're actually going through something so traumatic if you don't get enough sleep.
Oh, after 4 hours of sleep deprivation, you actually have an upregulation of protein synthesis, you have increased inflammation. When you start going to about 1 or 2 days of sleep deprivation, that inflammation becomes extremely pronounced. When you get to the hallucination point, that's when things in your brain are really, really going awire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now currently we have people or companies, or this lifestyle of people working in shifts, night shifts and morning shifts. So talking about night shifts, I have gone and worked in a night shift. Is that recommended, being a sleep expert yourself? I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but is it really in our nature to actually work at night?
So the hard answer to that is shift work is really, really bad for you long term.
Okay.
I'll tell you an anecdote from my personal experience. I actually did my dissertation at the Indianapolis Zoo. I was working with orangutans, and I was quantifying orangutan sleeps. That required me to do night shifts because I had to be up with an infrared video camera at night so I could score their behavioral signatures.
Okay.
And so for 7 months, I became nocturnal. And I still remember my friends telling me around month 3, they were like, you're kind of, there's something different about you, Dave. Like there's something going on. And then my doctoral supervisor, he said that my emails at month 5 were starting to get incomprehensible. And like I would have bouts of aphasia where, you forget a word, a basic noun. Like I think I need to go to the store, right? And you forget, these things start really compounding. And that's because we are a diurnal species. So we're a species that is evolved to do most of our activity during the daytime and then work into our inactivity at nighttime.
And is it worse if you switch between night shifts and morning shifts, or is it worse you're just doing night all the time?
No, that's a really good question. So that's almost, when you're switching back and forth, it's almost like a social jet lag, right? You're almost self-imposing a disruption to your circadian rhythm, which is really bad. Full time though, if you do it all the time, there is something to be said about the consistency. If you are really clever about it, if you're really good about your lighting and your sleep environment, you could get away with doing it, but for long term, it's really not recommended.
Okay, talking about environments, what currently now, first thing that I hear talking about sleep deprivation and things like that, it's our smartphones.
Yep.
Everybody has this thing, we look at it before we sleep and it really affects our sleep. But are there also other factors in our environment that actually is affecting us to not get good sleep?
Yeah, well, it comes down to 2 things, light and temperature.
Okay.
These are what we call the principal Zeitgebers or circadian entrainment factors. Light is critical, so you mentioned your cell phone, right? Your cell phone, when you are looking at it, your cell phone is blasting you with blue wave light. Same thing with LCD screens from your computers, your televisions. And what blue wave light does is it inhibits melatonin production. This is the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake activity. So it's really, really devastating for your circadian rhythm. It's highly recommended that before you go to bed, stop looking at your cell phone and stop looking at your computer about an hour. And that's like
difficult.
I know.
That's very difficult. Yeah.
I know. I know the data, and it's still like I'll be right before bed. I'll check something. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
So, because smartphones, we have it all the time. Right? It becomes a thing, and recently they actually incorporated this interesting thing on a phone where it actually shows you how many times a day or how many minutes in an hour you actually take out your phone, and the average score is about 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So, smartphones actually have like a blue light filter thing? Does that actually work?
Yeah, it should help. It should help. But there's another confounding factor here, because say for example you're looking at social media, and there is something on your phone that has some sort of social consequence, like you find out that your boyfriend or girlfriend cheated on you, right? That's going to be really bad for your sleep that night. And that's a completely different mechanistic system. That's cortisol, that's acetylcholine, that's other things in your brain that are totally going to disrupt your sleep on a completely different wavelength.
Okay, so thank you, doctor. We'll just be right back. After this, I think we can talk about the evolution connection and also a very interesting system that you actually brought to my attention. All right, so we'll be back after this. All right, thank you. This has been Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar, and we are with Dr. Samson. So, Doctor, we've been talking about sleep. Let's move on to the evolution connection. Primates and humans, are we doing pretty well in sleep compared to our primates?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, and this is actually what myself and my colleague, Dr. Charles Nunn at Duke University, we've been focusing on the past 3 or 4 years, and really this was the gateway into me being fascinated about sleep. We discovered through some series of analyses that humans actually sleep the least out of any primate on the planet. On the extreme end, owl monkeys sleep 17 hours out of the 24-hour period.
17 hours?
17 hours.
Okay.
Yes. And we sleep, on average, if you look at it globally, and you're integrating traditional populations and Western populations, and you're doing it as rigorous as you can, about 7 hours. We are...
Is that healthy?
Oh, it's species specific. So for an owl monkey, 17 hours is healthy. You want, if you're an owl monkey, you've evolved to sleep 17 hours. For a human, 17 hours would be highly maladaptive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that 7 hours that we have, is that still okay? Is it a recommended?
That's a good distinction, and I'm not here to, as an evolutionary biologist, I'm not here to make a sort of like a recommendation, because there's going to be, so think of it like 7's here, right? And that's the top of the bell curve. It's just natural variation. And there's going to be some individuals out there that can do 5 hours. Okay. That's fine. Genes play a very important role. Okay. Through twin studies, they've shown that if you look at, it's different depending on what sleep architecture segment you're looking at, but about 80% of your sleep architecture is heritable. So that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a pretty high level of genetic control. So there are some people that can go off 4 or 5 hours, perhaps, but they're rare. And just as rare are the people that have to have, say, 9 hours to function.
So we all have that even I know like a friend or a cousin or what who's like, oh, I can sleep for 4 hours and I'm fine.
Yep.
And you're like, no, I need my 8 hours, you know? So it actually depends on the person themselves.
Yeah, yeah. One gene in particular called PER3 is implicated in this, and it, depending on the allele form of this gene, it looks like you have a little bit more resilience or less resilience to cognitive or to sleep deprivation and cognitive function.
Wow. Okay. We have to move on to the glymphatic system.
Yes.
Wow. And I just saw your presentation on that. So could you just explain to us what is that system all about?
So your listeners may be familiar with the lymphatic system. This is sort of the system in the body that processes waste, spent proteins. Right? Okay. What they discovered in 2012, which I think is one of the most remarkable discoveries in physiology in the 21st century, was that the lymphatic system is a similar system as the lymphatic system, but for the brain. So glymph meaning brain cell, right? And so what's going on here is that right now, as being alert humans, right, and engaging in conversation, as a byproduct of that, we're producing a toxin that's building up in our brain. It's called beta amyloid. Okay. And one of the functions of sleep, particularly deep sleep, slow wave sleep, is to wash out this beta amyloid, this toxin that's in the interstitial tissue of your brains with your spinal fluid. So this discovery was actually sort of a landmark discovery, and it's helped us figure out why sleep deprivation does the things that it does to us cognitively.
So this is actually physical waste?
Yeah, it builds up. So you produce about if you have a shot glass, imagine it halfway full, like a half shot. You produce that each day.
Each day?
Each day.
Wow. And is that, does it also depend on how much brain function that we actually do during the day? Yeah,
so that's a really great question. I think there's going to be a base rate that's produced just because if you're an alert individual, it's just a byproduct of like running your car, right? But I bet there's something to do with it. If you're running the car extra hard, it might produce a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And how important is that lymphatic system if you don't get enough sleep? Is that system affected?
Yeah, it's critical. It'll affect cognition, but here's the kind of the scarier thing. As humans, and this comes back to the evolutionary narrative of us being short sleepers. As humans, we only get 7 hours, right? We don't, most of our common ancestors get a little bit more. And some people have suggested that this may be why we're vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease. because Alzheimer's is correlated with beta amyloid. So when you look at patients that have symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, they have a higher amount of beta amyloid in their interstitial tissues. It's pretty convincing evidence that there's a link there. And what we're thinking is that perhaps at the midpoint of your life, if you have really good sleep quality, it may prevent something like Alzheimer's downstream.
Wow, okay. Talking about Alzheimer's, we have to go to a condition where you don't want to call it a disorder, insomnia.
Yeah.
So how bad is it?
Yeah. So let me address the point on why I'm hesitant. So I'm not a clinician, I'm an evolutionary biologist,
Okay.
but I'm interested in the evolutionary why.
Okay.
And it turns out that when you tell people, okay, you have a disorder, right? They end up getting stressed out. They have anxiety. What is the primary symptom of insomnia? It's anxiety. So one of the things you do is you let them know, hey, from a evolutionary standpoint, there's actually a pretty good reason why you would be, say, hypervigilant, which is essentially the characteristic of someone who has insomnia. They're hypervigilant. In a environment such as the environment in which our ancestors evolved, it would be pretty adaptive to be hypervigilant. You've got lions in the brush, you've got maybe a rival tribe that may come and, you know, pose violence on you in the night.
Yep.
So hypervigilance could have been very adaptive. But now we have what we term evolutionary mismatch. And this is the concept that our bodies have evolved for how things were, not how things are, and things are changing quickly. So we have these secure sleep environments, but we still think we have tigers and predators out there, but it's been replaced by, say, a PowerPoint presentation in the morning or a talk we have to give to a classroom, something like this, right?
So insomnia is something like anxiety.
It's very anxiety driven. And what's going on is these things that our body thinks are threats. So our amygdala, which is the part of our brain that processes emotion, emotional content, our amygdala will start firing and it produces these anxiety effects. And that's an ancient adaptation. That's a good thing if the threat's real. But is your PowerPoint presentation life-threatening?
Yeah.
And that's what you have to ask yourself. And when patients understand that narrative, they understand the evolutionary why, it turns out they begin to reduce their anxiety because they're like, oh, I'm not maladaptive. This is normal human variation, and they end up sleeping better.
So could we say that just understanding the problem more is one of the types of treatments that you can for insomnia and then other sleep disorders?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a technique that's being used in the West now by clinicians and medical practitioners that are really young and they're new and they know their evolutionary theory and they're getting the word out there and it's actually having a good effect.
All right. Just to wrap it up, you're being a person who really knows about sleep. 300 million people in Southeast Asia have issues sleeping.
Yep.
Your life hacks
Yeah.
on getting better sleep.
Yeah, two things. You want good sleep hygiene, so that we have body hygiene, right?
Yep.
You brush your teeth so you don't get cavities. It's pretty common sense. You have sleep hygiene, which means that you're going to have a good sleep environment that's nice and dark, that doesn't have a lot of distractions, not a lot of bright blue wave lights in that room. And getting to that, you also have what we're terming a lot in the West now is this term light hygiene, meaning that really for your audience, I think boil it down to this. You want to be exposed in your internal environment. You want to be exposed to the kind of lights that are actually going on right then and there outside. So if it's noon, you want to get as much natural light as possible.
Okay.
Go have lunch outside. Get that 5,000 lux and it's going to be a signal to your circadian system that you're firing on cue. But then at night, turn those lights down. When the sun goes down, turn those lights down. I did an experiment once where I walked around in candlelight for 2 weeks when the sun went down, and I had some really good sleep.
Oh.
It's just hard to do.
It
It takes a little discipline.
Yeah. But when we sleep at night, are you telling us not to have any lights on at all in that sleep environment? Or if on a night light, that's okay?
If you have that night light, make sure it's a nice warm hue, like a nice red, or think fire, right? Don't think bright blue wave light.
Okay. And phones must be off 1 hour before.
1 hour before. It's hard to do, but put those cell phones away.
Okay. And no Netflix before we.
Yeah.
Before
Unless
sleeping?
it's super boring, but if you do, wear your blue wave light blocking glasses or something. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, your thoughts on people actually taking sleep more seriously right now?
Yeah.
You are out. You're talking to a lot of people. You're going for events, conferences, and things like that. What is the situation now? Do you think people are taking sleep more seriously?
Yeah, I think so. You know, in the West, we had this sort of this Puritan, conservative work ethic where you can sleep when you're dead, right? And I think that because of our continued research and continued increase in understanding of the value of sleep, we're definitely figuring out that is not the right approach. You need sleep, you need good quality sleep, you need good duration of sleep so that the life that you experience when you're awake is of great value. And that's what we really want.
All right, thank you, Doctor, for your time.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. This has been Health Matters with me, Dishen Kumar. Today's topic is about sleep. We actually discussed with Dr. Samson about every aspect about our sleep. The one thing that he actually reminded us about again after the interview was to turn off our phones 1 hour before we sleep. I know that's difficult, but we have to try. Here's to a better sleep, a better life, and better health. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.